and your hip. You heard of circle footwear? No, mate. No one's up with it. I'm feeling really hip and really down right now. Maybe I'm just too far gone, Keith. See, too far. So what I loved from that, out of that, was the fact that these guys are what could be considered, especially what he said in there when he got saved, he went back to church. He felt like an outsider. He felt like he didn't belong to be a part of that group there. Did you notice that? And so he was talking about the way that these guys have created this movement where they feel like God had led them to be the whosoever's, to go out to those who are outside of the church, who feel like they're not going to be a part of the church, and to be able to reach them with Jesus. And they said we do that by loving them well, and then we allow Jesus to come in and start to change them. And I think that really speaks into what we're talking about today when we're talking about Jesus as the friend of sinners, okay? And don't get freaked out. Some people get freaked out by that word sinners, okay? Sinners, I think I was thinking about it before, and I thought this is a semi-okay explanation, is that God's perfect and we're not. And so that makes us sinners, so that makes us all of us. We're none of us reach his perfection, so that we all are sinners. So we're all blanketed under that statement. Does that make sense? That we all are sinners, saved by grace. So for me personally, and for us as a church, I think we've been on this bit of a journey that, specifically through the Jesus the Game Changer series, about looking at people differently. So I think those who are the outcasts, those who are the broken, those who are the rejected in society, I feel personally, and I feel like God's been taking that maybe because I'm on that personal journey and I'm tending to preach a lot, being the pastor here, that I'm taking us on a little bit of a journey there to take us to a place where we're seeing people from the perspective that Jesus sees them. So when I'm reading through Luke now, I'm being challenged and changed by the way that I'm thinking about certain people, okay? The way that I'm thinking about those who are outside the church, those who might be broken, marginalised, outcast, those who are considered the sinners. Okay, and last week, again, just hammered onto that. Phil, who was here last week to hear Phil's message? Because it was fantastic. Who's heard it online? If you haven't heard it, really, really powerful message about someone who was lame, on the ground there, and they were Peter and John. This is what I didn't get when I read the story a million times, that I didn't get this, that they were walking past him. Okay, Peter and John, these two pillars in the Christian church, the start of the Christian church, were walking past this guy who's lame, sitting there on the ground. They weren't even going to speak to him, they were going to walk straight past him. And he was really called out, and they offered what they had to him. And so this idea of what are we stepping over when we could be stepping into the mess and the broken people in our lives and the things that are happening around us. I'm sure there's lots that are in our life around us that we can step into. So we're going to continue to step into that today. And we're going to look at one passage in particular from Luke 5, verse 27 to 29. I'll stay out here. Let's read this. After this, he went out and saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at a tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And leaving everything, he rose and he followed him. And Levi made him a great feast in his house. There was a large company of tax collectors and others reclining at the table with them. And the Pharisees and the scribes, I love that, by the way, that before that Jesus, that Levi gets saved and he throws this massive party and invites Jesus and invites all of his friends, those who are the outsiders as well, you're all invited to meet Jesus as well. I kind of like that. That excites me. Okay, continue on. Doesn't excite anybody else here, but that's fine. It excites me, so that's good. And the Pharisees and their scribes grumbled at the disciples, saying, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" And Jesus answered them, "Those who are well are of no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." So, what are we going to talk about from this? We're going to sort of pick this apart by the people who are in this story. Okay? And we're going to start again by talking about the tax collectors and sinners. So we talk about sinners, I said it before, those who fall short of God's standard. It's all of us. We're all sinners. But in this particular thing of society, it's probably breaking it up because those who were the religious leaders thought of themselves as righteous and good. And so anyone else who didn't match up to their standards were considered to be the sinners, those who were on the outside of that. Okay? And tax collectors were even worse. I don't know if you guys have heard me explain this, but tax collectors, at the time of Jesus, Rome was occupying Israel. So what the tax collectors were doing were for those who had come and occupied Israel, who had come and taken over, Israel, they were collecting money for them, Rome, to continue to oppress Israel. Does that make sense? So you can imagine what these people were. So if you had someone from, I don't know, what's another country around the world that we don't like? New Zealand? No. Oh, she's not here. She's going to kill me. Let's just say, because they're antagonising people, North Korea, okay, came and took over Australia, and then Breno here decided, you know what, I can make some money. I'm going to actually collect money off everybody to help them continue to oppress the rest of us. Are we going to like Brett? She's very quick off the mark. No, we're not. That's the type of people that were there. This is the tax collector. This is Levi was doing. So not only was he skimming money off the top and taking money that he wasn't supposed to off the people, so making money for himself, but he was doing it to continue to oppress the people. So this is when we're talking about tax collectors and we're talking about sinners, we're talking about this people. Now the Pharisees. The Pharisees are an interesting bunch. I think they're very zealous for their traditions and for God, but I think that they slightly missed the point. I'm going to read from Luke chapter 11, starting from verse 37. I didn't put it up on the screen, so you just have to listen. If you want to get out your phone or your Bibles, if you brought anything, so it's chapter 11 of Luke, verses 37. So while Jesus was speaking, a Pharisee asked him to dine with him, so he went in and reclined at the table. So Jesus is pretty good here. He goes and he has dinner and feasts with tax collectors and sinners, and he has it with the Pharisees, so he's pretty across the board. And the Pharisee was astonished to see that he did not first wash his hands before dinner. And the Lord said to him, "Now you Pharisees clean the outside of the cup of the dish, but inside you are full of greed and wickedness. You fools! Did not he who made the outside make the inside also? But give us alms of those things that are within, and behold, everything is clean for you." So what he's saying there is that the Pharisees were trying to make everything on the outside look great, but on the inside they were horrific people. Right? But they thought if everything was on the outside looks good, then that's okay. So they were hypocrites. Remember that, hypocrites, okay? "But woe to you Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and every herb and neglect justice and the love of God." So they do all these tiny little things that were within their tradition, but then neglect justice and the love of God. "Woe to you Pharisees, for you love the best seats at the synagogues and greetings in the marketplace." They love to be the heads of society. They love the attention. And one of the lawyers answered him also, said, "Teacher, in saying these things, you insult us also." And he said, "Woe to you lawyers also." So he doesn't back down. He says, "Yep, I'm hammering you guys too. For you load people with burdens hard to bear, and you yourselves do not touch the burdens with one of your fingers." So here they are, these Pharisees, okay? They're hypocrites. They are, what was the next one? They're neglecting justice, they're neglecting the love of God, and they're doing all their traditional things. So they're doing all the churchy things, okay? They turn up to church each week, they're raising their hands at the right time during worship, they're opening their Bibles when they're supposed to, but they're neglecting love and justice. And not only that, they're heaping burdens upon people and doing nothing to help them. So what they're actually doing is they're excluding themselves from those who are the tax collectors, the sinners, the outcasts, the broken, anyone who doesn't measure up to their standard of society, they're excluding themselves from it. You're over here, I'm over here, we're going to have nothing to do with each other. And what they will do is from over here, they'll speak about how nasty these things are. There's times where in the Bible, I can't remember the exact place, where two people go in to pray, a Pharisee and a tax collector, and the Pharisee goes in and says, "Thank you, God, for not making me like this tax collector."
And a woman too, I think.
Oh, there's some of those ones where they say, "Well, this is about the tax collector." So, and then the tax collector comes in and he just says, "Have mercy on me, God, for I am a sinner." And Jesus says, "Who's the one who goes more righteous before God? Is the one who says, 'Have mercy on me,' not the one who puffs himself up." But I'm getting away from where I was supposed to be. So these guys were self-righteous, okay? It says back here in chapter 5, he says here, "Those who have, I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." So he's not saying that the Pharisees are righteous, so I don't need to worry about you guys because you guys are all good. He's saying you guys are actually self-righteous. You guys are full of pride. And I can't crack into you guys because you guys think you've got it all already. So Jesus, who's Jesus? Jesus is in this scripture, it says he's the doctor. So what do we do when we go to the doctor? Why do we go to the doctor? Because we're unwell. We're sick, because we need to. We don't turn up to the doctor's office, do we? It's just stroll on in there, turn up to the doctor, sit down and say, and he says, oh, yeah, can I help you? And you're like, oh, no, I'm good. I just wanted to come and have a chat to you. How's your golf? How's your golf going? It's going all right. Like we don't do that. And that's the thing about those who Jesus is calling, is talking to, are those that recognise they have a need for him. So he's a doctor to those who recognise they have a need for him. He's the one who seeks out the lost. He's a friend of sinners. He's a friend of the have-nots. Okay, I love this. The haves and the have-nots. And here he is. He's the friend of the have-nots. If you're a have-not, okay, if you feel like I'm a have-not, if everyone else has all this and I'm a have-not, you know what? Jesus is close to you if you're a have-not. Luke 19, 1-10. I won't read it out today, but it's the story of Zacchaeus, the wee little man. No one's going to finish. The little man was he? Yeah, I was waiting for someone to finish it off for me. And so he climbs up in this tree to see Jesus, and he's a tax collector too. So he's in the same boat as Levi, our mate we've just been talking about. And so Jesus walks past him and he says, hey, Zacchaeus, come down. We're going to you. No, sorry, so he calls him down. He says, we're going to go to your house. Okay? And that may seem weird to us, but the fact is that this teacher invites himself into this, and that's a really exciting thing. And so Zacchaeus, he totally changes. Okay, everyone's, again, they're grumbling about him eating with tax collectors and sinners again, and he says, hey, Zacchaeus gets up this time and says, I'm going to restore all the money that I've stolen from the people that I've stolen from, and he's going to pay it all back. And so Jesus says, salvation has come to this house. And then he says, the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. This is Jesus. He's come to seek and to save the lost. I don't know about you, but in our day and age, I've been trying to think about the differences back then and the differences now. And religion in that time and their community life religion was front and centre. It was absolutely ingrained in the fabric of their society. So for someone to say that you're a sinner, like that was very recognisable. They would go, yeah, I am. Like I get that because we've got religion's kind of fully ingrained in our society. I get that I'm not measuring up to this. They would understand that. And if they didn't understand it, like we said before, they'd have the Pharisees over there and they'd be telling them, you're a sinner. You've fallen short. You know, they'd be saying all sorts of things to these guys, and they were doing nothing to help them at all. Is this the same for our day? Do people recognise that they are sinners in need of the grace of God? Do you think they are? This is not a rhetorical question. Do you think so? Sorry? Well, we all do. I won't not argue that point, but do people who are outside of the church, do they recognise that they... So again, let's put it back to that thing that I've got there. I don't think anyone's going to argue that they're perfect. So we're going to say that everyone's in the same boat, all of us. Do people recognise that, or do they see it that I'm okay? What do you think? They're okay with it? Yep. Yep, so I think they're okay. Yep. Santa Claus Christians.
They believe, I'm always good enough. So
But,
you always say to kids who's not good to get a present, so they're always good enough.
okay.
Yeah, it's the Santa Claus Christians. Whatever they do, they're always good.
Okay. Yep.
A lot of them would be affected by the past, the effect of if they've engaged in people who are Christians and the effect that it's had upon them. And if it's been a negative and really condemning, they would find it very difficult to.
Yep.
So to me, it's a very broad spectrum
Mm-hmm.
range of people.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. But I think you hit one nail on the head there, that depending on experience of people, with what they have with the church and with Christians, yep.
And how they, and whether we believe it or not, they're watching our actions.
Yep.
Does it line up with what they're saying?
Yep. And I guess the question is, what are we saying as a church as well? So for us as a church, I think we're coming to grips with the fact that the church is no longer now, what we just talked about before, part of the centre of society. Okay? The church has been gone here, off to the margins, off to the side. So what church says about, different moral things and something like that, it's now considered primarily be outdated with things. People don't agree with it. It's not, before it was seen as, yes, where the church has something big to say, the church has a lot to say in this, and we're going to listen to what the church says about these things because we still consider ourselves to be a Christian society. But now it's like, no, we're going to push that stuff back. And we're going to see, in some sense, we're okay. We can figure this stuff out on our own. We don't need the church. So the church is marginalised in that sense. And there's the idea that we're sort of pushing back on things and going, well, hang on a second, we're losing some of our moral grip on society, when I don't think that was our place in the first place to be. Church, we live moral life and we speak into that as much as we can, but we're not. That's not what we're called to be. We're not called to be the moral authority within our society. That's not what we're called to be. Our primary reason for existing is not getting ourselves or getting others to live moral lives, but it's about in living in the brokenness and imperfection that we are, living in reliance upon Christ and reflecting that love that he's given to us, to others as well. So too often people, I think Keith said it there, think we're the judgmental moral police, and that's not the church. And if people think that about Colleton Church, that we're the moral police or something like that, I'm going to be devastated. I'm going to be devastated. I don't think that's the truth, but I will be very devastated. But if we look to Jesus, what we just read about Jesus, what we've been reading about Jesus, what do we see? We see Jesus, look what he does with the broken, the outcast, the sinner. He seeks them, he eats with them, he invites them to follow him, he heals them, he loves them. This is our model. This is our model. We don't follow the Pharisees who separate themselves from the broken, the outcast, the sinner. We don't separate ourselves there. Our model is to seek, is to go, is to invite, is to invest, is to be a part of people's lives. I think everyone should probably raise their hand with this. Everyone's played hide and seek before? Who's played hide and seek? Yeah. I love playing hide and seek. I was playing the other day with Judabek and before he got sick. And he does not get the concept of the game very well yet. So he'll just literally, he'll say, count, Dad. And so I'll start counting and he'll literally drop on the floor in front of me, put a pillow over his head and hide. And then as soon as I finish counting, he won't even wait for me to go and find him. He'll just pop his head up and say, he just sort of down. And so he's beautiful. I love playing hide and seek with the kids. It's great fun. But it doesn't work if you're counting and then you sit there, unless you're playing with Judah, obviously. And you just sit there. And you count 19, 20, ready or not, here I come. Here I sit. Where are you?
It works beautifully if you're trying to get people quiet.
It's not the name of a game. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. And your kid's not going to have issues. Mum didn't come and find me. But this doesn't work that way, does it, hide and seek? It doesn't work. We just seek out the one who's hiding. And some of them hiding spots are quite easy to find, aren't they? Like my kids, generally quite easy. Some get harder, and I can't, and then there's some who you literally can't find them. No matter how hard you're looking, you can't find them. And often it's because they've gone outside out of the bounds of where you're supposed to go. But, all of us have hiding spots where we try and get away from the life that we're living. Some are more obvious. So if we're talking about this in the context of sin, some are more obvious, than others. But often we try to keep them in the dark. We try to hide in the darkest most, the unreachable spot. And for those outside of the church, it's just the same. Life is hard. Life is difficult. Lots of things that are happening in life that are hard to cope with. So we tend to figure out whatever we can to continue to cope with life, whatever that means, whatever we need to go to. If we don't have Jesus to go to, we're going to try and go somewhere else. We're going to try and fill it with something else to cover the need. Does that make sense? Anyone agree with this, or am I talking to myself? Some semi-nods? Yeah? Okay. So, again, when we're in our hide-and-seek game, we've got people we just talked about who are coping in certain ways. If we come back to our idea of our hide-and-seek game and that idea where we finish counting and then we just sit there and we don't go anywhere. And we call out, hey, where are you? Oh, this is a stupid game. We do what Carolyn does and we go for peace and quiet and we don't even find it. Okay?
You finished your coffee.
That's right. But the idea of the game is it's not going to work that way. And the idea for us is that if we take that to the way that we do, the way that we try and reach out to people with the love of Jesus, if we take that posture of sitting still and waiting and expecting, I think we're blessed that we don't have a church. We don't have four walls in some senses to be able to do everything behind. We have to get out of this place. We can't stay here. We're blessed to have this building for a Sunday afternoon. We can't have it all week. We can't stay where we are if we're going to reach people. And Jesus, our model, was not the one. He was the seeker, wasn't he? And so he's calling us to seek in that same way. And I guess part of that is our attitude. What is our attitude sometimes? And I'm going to speak into myself. My attitude stinks sometimes towards certain people. And I don't even realise it. I think it's actually ingrained sometimes from childhood. Some little things you pick up or something and you just get some sort of an animosity towards a certain type of people, and it's there, and you just, and we push away. And I sit back here and I'll say things. And I don't know about you guys, but I have that attitude. I don't know if you guys have an attitude, you're thinking about this, and you go, oh, actually, I have an attitude towards somebody as well. And if I look at Jesus and I think about the example that he's posing for us here, and if we're putting people like a tax collector and the way that they were seen within society, and he went straight to him and invited him to follow him. That's our model that we've got. And I think for us as a church and as individuals, I'm sure that in your mind you've already got people in your mind that you might be thinking about that you can spend time with. And this, I think, is the key for us to do, is that we go out and we seek and we eat with and we have coffee with. I don't drink coffee, but you have coffee. Who likes coffee here? A few people, coffee snobs here, that's good. I'm offending a lot of people today, I think. I'm in a weird mood. We love them, we listen to them, we understand them, and then here's the key, I think. We ask good questions. Ask good questions. So when you're listening to somebody and you're understanding them and you're hearing their story and you're hearing the things that they're talking about, and maybe they're bringing up some of the brokenness in their life, and you start to build a relationship. If you have a relationship already, you might already have this in there. Start to look at it from the lens of the gospel and start to see ways that you can start to break in with good questions. And if you're asking good questions, then they're the ones who've got to actually bring about and go, okay, hang on a second. I'm not sure how I can figure that out within my own brain. I'm not sure why I think that way. I'm not sure why I act that way. I'm not sure how that doesn't make any sense to me anymore as the question gets asked. And then we get the opportunity then to start to speak into the way that God's impacted our heart and our life, the way that He's challenged us. the way that he's changed us, the way that he's been our hope, the way that he's loved us, the way that he's forgiven us, the way that he's freed us from different things. We're able to speak into that. But I believe, and there's times when we're going to be able to do that, and there's times we're going to be able to do that from cold turkey, be able to go and talk to someone, and then boom, it's going to happen, and God's going to open the door. Fantastic. It's going to happen that way, absolutely. But more often than not, what's going to happen is in the context of relationships. And so we need to be intentional with our relationships. And I think part of that is really having that listening ear to people, loving them well. And like the guy said on the video there, loving them well, and then bringing Jesus in to be the one who bring about the change in people's hearts and lives. And often we get that wrong. We want to change people and then bring Jesus into it. Does that make sense? It's a very easy thing to get, because you want to see positive things happen for people, but it needs to be Jesus is the one who brings about the change in people's hearts and lives. So Jesus was a friend of and to sinners, to the broken and the outcast. And we as his followers are called to do the same. And we're all doing this together. We all contribute, we all love, we all seek, we all eat with and point people to the doctor, the great physician who can heal them, and he continues to heal us of our greatest sickness, and that's sin. So, I really don't have any way to finish this today other than to say that no, I'm not going to finish it that way. I'm going to finish it with a song, which most of you will probably know. And I'm going to invite people, again, we talked about it before, about inviting Jesus into places. I'm going to invite people up for prayer. And so I like the way that Phil expressed it last week. He says if you need to call someone, if you need to message someone, if you need to pray with someone, if you need to spend time just by yourself, just praying, and you want to stand up and you want to worship with all you've got, because you're recognising just again how great God is and how much he's loved each and every one of us. If you want to recognise again for the first time, hey, I feel like I'm falling short of the mark here, but I'm recognising today again that Jesus really loves me. He really, really loves me. And I pray that you would know that you have a family here that loves you too. So let's finish with this song, and if you need prayer, please come and get some.